like she was obsessed with a man, and when you're obsessed with a man, like you get killed. How many times am I gonna say that I love this book? Okay, that we're gay people in the 20s. Can you believe it? Hello, my name is Andrew. Welcome to my channel. I'm coming to you today with a review that I'm pretty sure is gonna be spoiler filled. I'm just so happy that I read this book and that I love this book and that it's probably gonna become a favorite series of all time, because everybody says the books get better, except people are disappointed by the fourth book. So we'll see how I feel. But I'm just so excited to have a book that I was like in the middle of this book. I bought this book for friends. I was screaming about this book to everybody, telling them to just like listen to the first 5 minutes of the book. And they just need to, you already know what the book is because it's in the title. But yes, The Diviners by Libba Bray was so good, and I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I thought so, because I don't have anything negative. There's nothing that I did not love about this book. Personally, I'm just going to gush. Look, we're just going to be gushing about how excited I am to be a part of this fandom. Okay. I actually thought this book was really popular, but I feel like I'm seeing some people like say that they haven't even heard of it. So, The Diviners is a book. It's the first book in a 4-book series that takes place in the 1920s in New York. And it's following mostly this girl, Evie, who's like sent away from her home in Ohio to go live in New York because she was a little bad girl. The whole video is going to be spoiler filled at one point, but I'm going to try to say a few things to people that are undecided if they want to read the book. So I just have to tell you a few things, because personally, I heard this book is historical fiction, and just it just went over my head. I just didn't think that'd be for me. And I also feel like I heard this described as a character-driven story. And there are a lot of characters, but personally, I would not describe this as a only character-driven story. I feel like it is equal parts character and plot. That's how I feel. I know some people think it leans more on character-driven, but I just also loved the characters, so maybe I just didn't feel that because I didn't love all the characters, but most the characters that I'm supposed to like, I liked. So if you don't think historical fiction will be your thing, then I would highly encourage you to still hear me out when I just describe some more things here, because this is a book that talks about speakeasies and New York and flappers, and I haven't read The Great Gatsby, and I want to read it now because I think that I liked this. I've seen the movie The Great Gatsby and I've felt very meh about it. So I think I didn't love this exclusively for the historicalness of it, but that definitely added to my personal enjoyment of it. But I think the reason that it was so good was because it was historical, and it also had supernatural elements, and you have characters that all have powers where they can, like, one of them can touch an object and like see the past or like what's happened in the object. That's your main girl, Evie. And then you have Memphis, who's like a healer, and he can heal stuff, and he has like siblings and like stuff with his mom. This book was, and people talk about this book like it's gonna be the scariest thing ever, and like it has spooky moments, but to me this was like the perfect level of spooky. Like it was not, I don't think this would give anybody like nightmares, because the villain is, I don't want to say the villain is weak, but it's definitely like, because what happens is terrifying. What happens is like, I don't know if I would say this chilled me to the bones, but let me just say that if you like American Horror Story and you like it because of like supernatural things that happen, like with ghosts, then I really, really, really would encourage you to pick up this book. Okay, I haven't sold you on it yet. I'm gonna keep trying to just sell you on it, because I want the people that think they will love it to read it, because like I said, it's historical fiction, and that's not even my thing. But I'm realizing that like this book was so amazing, and that Evelyn Hugo was one of my favorite books I read last year. I just never thought I would be into historical fiction, but it just has this extra oomph to it, because it's like realistic, and you know the history of like America, and this book talks about how America is like this melting pot, and there's people from all types of different cultures that come to America, and all these different cultures have supernatural mythology behind them. And I will buy this book. If you want me to buy this book for you, like, I will do it. It was $25 to buy this for my friend, and I would do it again. I hadn't even finished the book and I bought it for someone else. I was only like 50% into the book and bought it for somebody else. I want to say that if you enjoyed Truly Devious and that whole series, I think, and I can just say this as someone who's read the first book, but I really think that you would like this story also, because there's a lot of like, in Truly Devious, there's a lot of like the school being awake, and like the school has all these like secret passageways and all that stuff. And there's kind of something similar in The Diviners with like the house like closing doors on people. I've already read all of Truly Devious, and I also like that series a lot. So now, if you have not read the book, then I would highly suggest leaving. I don't want you to be spoiled for this book, okay? Don't spoil yourself for this book. Don't do it. Don't take away anything from the experience of reading this book. Okay? All right. So if you have read the book, hi, hello, good to see you. Let's talk about characters. So we've got Evie, we've got THETA. THETA was like I loved Evie. Okay, I loved Evie. I thought she was amazing. She got spunk. She wanted her giggle water. She wanted her hooch. Like, yes. And I always like write off historical fiction because I just feel like it's going to talk about people that I wouldn't be interested in. But this is a character. She's a character who's like atheist, and she's very rebellious, and and that's like all what the 20s is about. The 20s is all about this, like, there's a chapter called like God is Dead in this book. And like, okay, so I loved Evie. I loved THETA. She had this whole like thing with Henry, and they told her whole backstory. I liked all the characters' backstories. I liked the plot. I liked the murder mystery. Oh man. So yeah, it starts off with Evie, as you know, because you've read it if you're here. Because again, if you haven't read it and you're watching this, don't cause me that pain. Okay, go away if you haven't read it. Evie is at, I think, was it Evie at the beginning? I don't know. There's like a party at the beginning, and like they're talking about how dull the party is, so they have to like they like get a Ouija board out to like liven up the party, because why not? So that summons a ghost. Then I think that was a different perspective. I thought that was Evie when I first read it, but you know, what's my comprehension? I don't know. But so Evie has her power where she can see an object, and then she can get a reading on an object, and then see the history or see what happened or the memories, or she can like feel, as she says in the book. Also, okay, just the writing in this book, like, it was so atmospheric, and it was so, and again, I didn't think I cared about atmospheric writing, but we're just learning. I'm learning so much about how showing and not telling. It's just, I'm going to look at the chapter titles because I feel like that'll help me remember. I didn't take any notes. Who's that? I didn't take any notes at all because I just took in the story. So at the very beginning of the book, Naughty John is like this ghost that's summoned, and throughout the book you have all of these like creepy scenes where he's murdering people, and they like think that like there was like a wall there, and then all of a sudden there's not a wall there, and it's just like they're gonna get murdered. And of course Evie and her uncle, so I'm all over the place here, but so Evie's uncle does he own the museum, or he works at the museum? It's like the Museum of the Occult. And just, so her mom like sends her away to New York because she used her power, and she like caused all this drama because she told this guy that he had a baby with another woman, and then it was starting some drama. And her mom was like, you know what, honey, like, you just need to leave. You just need to go to New York and live with your uncle. It's whatever. And I'm just gonna, like, the next place my head went was like, so many things happen, and then Evie's having a conversation with her uncle, and he's like, I want you to go back to Ohio. And she is like devastated at this idea, and is like, I need to try and like save myself from having to go back to New York. And she actually, it's like, well, let me show him my power so that he can like learn like how I can be useful to help him with these murders that are happening. And then like you get to see all the murders as they happen and they're described in detail, but it's like not, like I wouldn't call it bone chilling. I mean, everybody's level is different here, but to me it was definitely spooky, but like the spooky that I live for. I thought that Evie was a great character, and I thought that Mabel and Jericho, that was a whole thing, which reminds me about the end with Evie and Jericho and like what was happening. Evie and Jericho don't make sense to me. They just don't make sense to me. I much prefer Evie and Sam. The way that they meet, and she's like, hey, you sold me $20, and like just that whole dynamic was just perfect. Also, a character that's never that I haven't seen many people discuss is the T.H. Wells, like the newspaper guy who's like, hey, like I'll talk to you about the museum and all this stuff. Like, I don't know, man. I just, every time that he talked, I was like, oh, I'm in the 20s. I'm like, I love that. Because he was like, hey, dollface. And it was just wonderful to be there and to just realize that like people that lived in the 20s like aren't that different from us. And like there was this whole thing with I'm pretty sure it was Theta and Henry, and they went to this club, and she was talking about how he thought, or he said, she was the most beautiful woman ever, and then he didn't kiss her, and she was like, and then I realized like the bar we were at had a bunch of men, and I'm just so excited for this series to see how that develops with Henry. I've heard that there's more Henry in the other books and that it's gonna get gayer, and everything should be gayer. Just everything. Just make it gayer. Just make it less heteronormative people. Like we've seen enough. Okay, there were gay people in the 20s. Can you believe it? They were there. I feel like this was such a good first book because I'm so intrigued to continue, and it's like I'm so happy I have the whole series from the library and all the audiobooks by Miss Lavoie, who was performing. I mean, she was giving it her all. Okay, like delicious. And like the creep factor when she was like singing like Wade in the Water and like Naughty John, oh, it was perfection. It was perfect. Let's talk about the murder I found the most intriguing, which has got to be the lady who was obsessed with Naughty John and then had waited for him to come back. And then, of course, it was a thankless, like she got because like she was obsessed with a man, and when you're obsessed with a man, like you get killed. Also, we have to, okay, there's a scene where they dig up a man's grave, okay? They dig up a man's grave, Naughty John's grave, because they're trying to get this amulet or this object that he had so that they can trap him inside of it because he's murdering people, and they've figured it out. They're like, oh, it's Naughty John. He's the one murdering people. He's a ghost. Like, oh, so we have to like stop him, obviously. Okay, there was a moment. She finally like got the object, and I can't remember when in the book it happened, but there was a moment when she got the object and she went through his memories, and they're talking about like how there was a psychic connection between them, and he says like, I see you, which was so creepy in the best way. And then Will, her uncle Will that owns the museum, he was like, oh, so you went too far back and you created a connection with Naughty John. So now there's this connection with Naughty John. And oh my God, when she said, like when you hear it in the book and you hear him say like, I see you. And then Will is like, y'all got connected. What the fuck? Also, Jericho. All right, let's talk about Jericho. So Jericho is a robot. And I didn't see that coming. And the whole like reveal behind, there were so many reveals. Like I live for reveals. And there were so many characters telling you like their history and how they got to where they were. And there was that whole thing with Theta and how she like changed her name. I can't remember I think her original name was Mary, maybe. There was a lot of names to keep up with here, okay? There was a lot. And some people like changed their name. I can't remember who Naughty John's wife was, but I'm pretty sure it was Naughty John's wife that ended up like getting murdered, but then her name was different, so that was a little confusing, but like it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the story. Yeah, Jericho being a robot, that was a whole like reveal thing. Not a robot, but like he was part of an experiment with who, like there was like military stuff. And then that moment when they talked about how he was like, oh, I had a friend who was telling me about the German and the American at the war and how he just like shot the guy because he was in so much pain, and he was looking at each other and they just knew that they had to kill him because he was in so much pain, and he was like, please put me out of my misery. And like Jericho's talking about how he had to do the same thing when he was part of these experiments because there were people that were just going crazy from these experiments that happened. Okay, also I loved the moment when, so Evie is like at her uncle's apartment, house, whatever. And he's like, you can't go anywhere, you can't go out. And she's like, no, I want to go out. Like I want to drink. Like I want to live my life. Like I have to be out and about, like living. And she goes to a speakeasy because she has to live her life. Like she had to go to that speakeasy, and it got raided. And then there's like cops. Like this book felt very like, I can't even tell you. Like I've told you all I can. Okay, and let's talk about how there were so many like biblical references here, because that is my shit. Okay, like I just love when Christians are terrible people. Or like when the story is told where the people that are Christian are committing heinous acts in the name of God, because kind of true. Okay, so like Memphis also, like he's a healer, and his whole thing with Isaiah, and then he had a brother. I don't know, man. I sound like I didn't comprehend stuff, and like I kind of didn't, but like I did. Like I'm gonna reread this book all the time. Like I will probably buy this series and annotate it because, oh man. But then there was like the 11 offerings and all this stuff, and then they were talking about how, so when he murdered people, and then he would have to like take their eyes or he didn't have to, but he would take their eyes or their hands or like certain parts of their body. And then when every time that Will was in like talking about like the conspiracy or whatever, like it was delicious. It was so good. I think that I just really like this because I didn't expect to like it. I can't remember whose brother it was that died. I want to say it was Gabriel. I'm pretty sure Gabriel was Memphis's brother, right? Because Isaiah had a premonition that if Gabriel went under this bridge, he would die. And that's exactly what happened. So I don't know what's going on with Isaiah because I'm only on book 1, but Isaiah. And I watched the Paper Cut live show, which if you haven't watched and you've read the book, then like that's really fun. So go check that out. I'll leave that linked below. I just feel like there's a lot of people that aren't giving this book a chance that will love it. That's really all I have to say, like initial thoughts after first finishing the book. I would like to go back and annotate it because there were some, especially at the beginning, I remember like actually clapping in my car as I listened to this book. I wanted to have this book up. Like I could just tell there's so many lines in this book that I want to be able to reference. But I'm just so happy to have a book series be a favorite book series. That's not Cassandra Clare, because I love all her series and she's what got me back into reading. And I'm just discovering other series that I love, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting. If you have read it, please tell me your thoughts. I will leave my Instagram below, my Goodreads, and my Twitter, which I use Twitter the least because that shit is toxic, but it's there. That's all.